Hello everyone, in this video we will quickly revise all the important environmental conventions very briefly from exam perspective, which will be very beneficial for the upcoming CSIR as well as APSC prelims examinations. First is the Ramsar Convention, which is also known as Convention on Wetlands. I'm sure all of you must be knowing what are wetlands. These are places in which land is covered by water, and these are very essential for a healthy environment. They help in controlling erosion, enhancing water quality, sequestration of carbon, and provide a home to at least 1/3 of all the threatened and endangered species. And from exam perspective, you should also remember when and where these conventions or protocols are adopted and when it came into force. So this Ramsar Convention is adopted in the city of Ramsar, Iran in 1971, and it came into force in 1975. Next is the Stockholm Convention. It is a global treaty which aims to protect the human health and the environment from the effects of persistent organic pollutants. These POPs or persistent organic pollutants are those organic pollutants which are continuing to exist over a prolonged period. So this Stockholm Convention was adopted in 2001, but it came into force in 2004. It was adopted in the city of Geneva in Switzerland. Next is the CITES. The full form of CITES is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. It aims to ensure that international trade in specimen of wild animals and plants does not threaten the survival of the species. It was adopted in 1963 and it came into force in 1975. Next is the CBD or Convention on Biological Diversity. It was adopted in 1992 and it came into force in 1993. The main aim is to conserve the diversity of the environment. Next is the Bonn Convention, which is also known as Convention on Migratory Species. It deals with the conservation of the migratory species of wild animals. It was adopted in 1979 and it came into force in 1983. Next we have is the Vienna Convention for the protection of ozone layer. It is an environmental agreement which provided the framework for international reduction in the production of chlorofluorocarbons, that is the CFCs, due to their contribution to the destruction of the ozone layer. It was adopted in 1985, but it came into force in 1988. Then we have is the Montreal Protocol. It is a global agreement to protect the stratospheric ozone layer by phasing out the production and consumption of ozone depleting substances. This Montreal Protocol was adopted in 1987 and it came into force on 1989. Next is the Kyoto Protocol. It is an international protocol to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. It was adopted in 1997 and it came into force in 2005. Next is the UNFCCC. The full form of UNFCCC is United Nations Framework Conventions on Climate Change. It is an international environmental treaty governing actions to combat climate change through adaptation and mitigation effort directed at control of emission of greenhouse gases which cause global warming. It was adopted in 1992 and it came into force in 1994. Next is the UNCCD, that is United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. From the name itself you must be knowing its function. It was adopted in 1994 and it came into force in 1996. Next is the Basel Convention. It is a convention on the control of transboundary movement of hazardous wastes and their disposal. It was adopted in 1989 and it came into force in 1992. Next we have is the Cartagena Protocol. So this Cartagena Protocol is an international agreement managing the movement of living modified organisms, or the LMOs, which are also called GMOs or genetically modified organisms, from one country to another to protect nature from the potential risk posed by such organisms by establishing procedures that countries can use to make informed decisions on the import of such organisms. It was adopted in 2000 and it came into force in 2003. Next is the UN-RED. The full form of UN-RED is United Nations Collaborative Program on Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation. From the name you must be knowing its function. It was adopted in 2008. Next we have is the Kigali Agreement. It is an amendment to the Montreal Protocol. It calls for the gradual reduction in the consumption and production of HFCs, or the hydrofluorocarbon, which is a potent greenhouse gas. It was adopted in 2016 and it came into force in 2019. So this is a amendment to the Montreal Protocol. Montreal Protocol also deals with the ozone layer, but it deals with the overall ozone depleting substances, but Kigali Agreement mainly deals with the gradual reduction of hydrofluorocarbon. Next we have is the Minamata Convention. It is an international environmental treaty intended to protect health and the environment from the adverse effects of mercury related to Minamata. Adopted in 2013 and it came into force in 2017. Next we have is the Rotterdam Convention. It is an international environmental convention on prior informed consent procedures for movement of certain hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade. So pesticides and hazardous chemicals related to Rotterdam Convention. It was adopted in 1998 and it came into force in 2004. Next we have is the Nagoya Protocol. The Nagoya Protocol is based on the access to genetic resources and fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from their utilization. It is a global agreement that implements the access and benefit sharing obligations of the Convention on Biological Diversity. It was adopted in 2010 and it came into force in 2014.